Well. Good morning, everybody. It's good to be together, isn't it? Yeah, on this beautiful weekend. Want to welcome our other campuses right now, our Cottage Grove, our Eagan, our Hastings, and our Woodbury campus, and those of you joining us on YouTube Live as well. Hey, I don't know how many of you are readers or not, but how many of you you've at least heard of this book called Brave New World? Anybody? Hands up, all campuses. Yeah, you've heard of it, by Huxley. This is a book that was actually written in 1931, but it makes the top 100 all-time most influential novels. So it's kind of a big deal. And the setting for this book is that the world as we know it today is no more. The world is no more. And we have now entered into a brand new utopian-like society that's filled with genetically altered people. How many of you are genetically altered? Can I see your hands? No, we aren't. Yeah, test tube babies, in other words. So this is a society, though, that's filled with these genetically altered people and religion, God, Christianity is no more. It's a brand new society where technology, where science, where pleasure is now the rule of the day and the rules people's lives. And I just want to pull out a couple of sentences from the book, because this is a conversation between two people, one of them trying to explain this brave new world. And this person is saying it's a society where, here it is, God isn't compatible with machinery and scientific medicine and universal happiness. And then this person goes on and explains it's also a society where all crosses have had their tops cut and become T's. Now, that line right there, as I was reading through a lot of the dialogue in this book, it sort of caught me. And it made me step back and think about trying to imagine that kind of a world. First of all, where God, where religion, where Christianity, no more, where a person named Jesus is not known. But then think about this, friends. Think about living in a world. I don't know how many of you have traveled around the world. I've had the privilege of being in a lot of different places. Crosses are everywhere in our world. Can you imagine living in a world where all the crosses have been cut off on the very top and then now form a T instead in honor of the God of technology? Can you imagine living in that kind of world? Now, Huxley was shooting for irony and satire as he sat down and penned this book. But I think we could argue today, 88 years later or so, that he was rather prophetic. I mean, when you think about the culture that you and I live in today, I think we could honestly say that there was a little more prophecy than there was irony or satire. What's not satire or irony or even prophetic is what I want to say to you next, which is this truth right here. Christianity is always one generation away from extinction. Think about that, because that is absolutely, positively true. Christianity, passing on faith, passing on the story of God, we are always one generation away from that exact thing happening. And that's why the onus or the obligation of passing on the faith, of telling the story of God to the next generation, of talking about Jesus and the cross and what all that means, that's always on us, the current generation. And so I have a couple questions for you. And my very first question is this right here. How are we doing? As we think about passing on faith to the next generation, as we talk about telling the story of God, as we talk about making sure this person named Jesus is known, how are we doing passing that on to the next generation? And as we think about that, let's talk for just a moment. We'll call a little time out here and talk about the generations, because one of the things I love about Crossroads is all the generations are here at all of our campuses. We are a multi-generational church. So let me just ask, are there any, and this is the very first generation, are there any builders/silent generation people that if you are 74 years or older, you are in that generation. I won't make you raise your hand, but my guess is some of you are here. And then I know there's some of us baby boomers, and we are, under 74. We're about 56 to 73. In fact, can I just hear from the baby boomers a little whoop whoop? Oh, wow. There's some very enthusiastic baby boomers around Crossroads. Yeah, and I'm one of them. And then there's the Gen X. That's the next generation. If you're mid 30s to mid 40s, you are Gen X. Say, that's me. All right, some of you in the house. And then, of course, the generation that we talk about a lot are the millennials. We talk about you a lot, 21 years of age to about 34 years of age. By the way, you don't all live in your parents' basements. Only a third of you actually do. And I got a text from one of you after last service being very mad at me for saying that. So you all don't live in your parents' basement, all right? That's just very true. And then the last generation this is our focus, by the way. I just want you to know this is our focus right now this weekend, is what we call Gen Z. If you are 20 years of age or younger, you are what we call Gen Z. Your nickname is the swipe generation. I wonder why. I have no idea. Well, yeah. Or you're also called the screeners. Yeah. You're the screeners or the swipe generation. And the thing about this generation, I think that is negative is not the fact that your heads are always buried in some device. That's not the negative thing. The actual negative thing about Gen Z, and by the way, Gen Z at the end of 2019 will be the largest generation in the history of our country. More Gen Zers than any other generation, by far, actually. But the thing that's sad about Gen Z is this. They are the most anxiety-prone generation ever. They are the loneliest generation ever. They are the most stressed out generation ever. And on top of that, they're the most suicidal generation that's ever existed in our country. That's truth, by the way, friends. This is the generation that at school, they don't have fire drills like we used to have. They actually have lockdowns. They have active shooter kind of drill things going on. But of all the things about this generation that I think really stand out, probably the biggest thing, in my opinion, the saddest thing, is this right here. Gen Z is the first truly post-Christian generation. This is undisputed. They are the first post-Christian. In other words, they are Christianity clueless. In other words, they don't know the story of God. They don't know what's in the Bible. They don't know that Genesis is actually a book in the Bible. If they're a student of history, they would say Genesis is a rock group from the 80s or whatever, but they don't know that Genesis is a book in the Bible. This is a generation that, again, faith is foreign to them. And it's no surprise when we dig a little deeper into Gen Z that 13% of Gen Z put their hand up and say, I'm an atheist. And that might not sound like a lot to you, but that's double the number of any other generation calling themselves atheists. And probably the most telling of all the statistics about Gen Z is this one. That 50% of Gen Z, think about this, 50% of all 20-year-olds and younger have never, ever stepped foot in a church. Not for a wedding, not for a funeral, not for a baptism or confirmation service, not for a Christmas service, not for an Easter service, not for any reason whatsoever. They've never stepped foot in a church. Again, it just, try to fathom that, friends. And I guess it doesn't surprise us when we look at their parents, the millennials and Gen X parents that they have, because those parents are what we call the nuns and the duns. We've talked about the nuns and duns. The parents of Gen Z, when they're asked about their religion or their religious preferences or affiliations, they either check the box, none, I don't have any. I'm not Baptist, I'm not Lutheran, I'm not Catholic. I'm not Presbyterian. I'm not Methodist. I got none. Or they check the done box. I used to be religious. I used to go to church, but I am El Dunzo. That's, by the way, my Cinco de Mayo Spanish reference. I'm El Dunzo. I'm sure that's how you say I'm done in Spanish. Sorry. Yeah, they're done. They're done. Why are they done? Yeah, they're done. Why are they done? Because church bored them out of their mind, or because their church burned them somehow or another, or because they're just so busy that they don't have time for it anymore. And this is the generation of parents that are leading the Gen Z. It's no wonder that Gen Z is the very first undisputed post-Christian generation. Again, it doesn't surprise us. And I want you to know, friends, that those Gen Zers are everywhere. Those Gen Z, those families are the families that surround every one of our Crossroads campuses. Those are the families that live next door to you and me. Those are the kids that we see running around everywhere. They're everywhere. Still, it's going to be the largest generation in our country. It almost is already. And the question going back to the question is, how are we doing? How are we doing in passing on this baton of faith? How are we doing sharing with them the story of Jesus? How are we doing passing on our faith? How are we doing? And I think if we're going to be honest, and I can't think of a better place to be honest than right here in our spaces and places we find ourselves right now. I think if we're honest, we have to say we're not doing very well. We're not doing very well. I mean, this generation, 50% of them have not even stepped foot in a church. They're not praying at home. They're not reading their Bibles at home. They're not talking about following Jesus at home. They're not. So the answer is we're not doing very well. And I want you just to think with me of the implications of all of this. You think about Gen Z right now. And fast forward 20 years from now. They have kids now. Let me ask you, what will the kids of Generation Z be like? What are they going to be like? What are they going to believe in? Where are they going to turn to interpret all of the data in life? Where are they going to find answers as to who they are, where they came from, where they're going, what their purpose on earth is? What is going to be the moral compass for their lives? Who are they going to put their faith and their hope in? Think about that. Let's say it's 2040 right now. Let's say it's 2040 right now. Is 2040 going to be the year that all the tops of all the crosses are cut off in honor of the God of technology? You're saying, Pastor Phil, you're being so dramatic. Why are you so over the top? I'm not really over the top. I'm just talking reality here right now. I'm just asking about the implications here. Where is all of this going? Fast forward, where is this all going? And my second question is this. Secondly, does it matter? Does it matter that we cut the tops off the crosses because we don't know what they're all about anymore? Does it matter that Jesus isn't known anymore? Does it matter that all the churches have closed down? Does it matter? Does it matter that people aren't praying? Does it matter? And some people would say we'd be a lot better off without any of that stuff. Do you believe that? I mean, I'll just speak for myself right now. Jesus has changed my life. And I've had a front row seat to see Jesus change literally thousands and thousands of people's lives. When we say around here that Jesus makes our lives better and he makes us better at life, we're not just like saying pious platitudes. Now, we believe that because we've seen it. We've seen it. So does it matter that the next generation does not know Jesus? Yeah, it really matters. I don't know what matters more than that, Because of Jesus, because I know Jesus, and if you know Jesus, you know that we know what God's like. Because Jesus came to show us what the Father was really like. Because of Jesus, because of his death on the cross for you and me, we know that our lives have worth and dignity. We know they matter. Because Jesus died on the cross and rose from the grave, we know that our sins and our shame and our guilt can be forgiven. And we can be free. Because of Jesus, because of his death and resurrection, we have hope. Because of Jesus and his death and resurrection, we can live lives today that are characterized by, that we can live abundant life today. And we know that when we die, because of Jesus, we know that we'll live with God for all eternity in a perfect new heaven and new earth. We're going to experience something that is mind-boggling because of Jesus. And just let me ask you, friends, again, what happens if all that goes away? What happens if Jesus and his story and what he's done is no longer told? And I just want to ask again, do you see what's at stake? I'm not trying to be dramatic. I mean, I got a D, I think, in my acting class I took in college. So I don't even know what it means to be dramatic. I'm just trying to share truth with all of us today, how important it is for you and how important it is for me to pass on faith in Jesus to the next generation, whether that's your kids or your grandkids or your nephews or your nieces or the kid next door. It's so important. David, who was the giant slayer, the second king of Israel, in Psalm 145, he says these words, "Let each generation, including ours, tell its children, God, of your mighty acts. Let them proclaim your power." And then Asaph, have you ever heard of Asaph? He was actually an ancient worship leader for the Israelites long ago, and he wrote many of the Psalms in our Bible. In Psalm 78, verses 4-8, Asaph writes these words, we will not hide these truths from our children. We will tell the next generation about the glorious deeds of the Lord, about his power and mighty wonders. For he issued his laws to Jacob. He gave his instructions to Israel. He commanded our ancestors to teach them to their children. So, why? The next generation might know them, even the children not yet born, and they in turn will teach their own children. So each generation, hear this, friends. So each generation should set its hope anew on God, not forgetting his glorious miracles and obeying his commandments. Then they will not be like their ancestors, stubborn, rebellious, and unfaithful, refusing to give their hearts to God. And this verse right here, verse 8, is that going to be the moniker of Gen Z? Is that going to be the verse that will be their life story? Will they be unfaithful, stubborn, rebellious, refusing to give their hearts to God? Will they? Will they? And since I'm throwing Bible verses out at you, let me throw out a few more Bible verses. Permission to throw a few more Bible verses at you? Just do this because I'm going to do it anyway. Yeah, okay. In the book of Judges, this is an Old Testament book. What's happened is Moses has led God's people out of slavery in Egypt. That's all about the book of Exodus. And then Moses dies, and he hands the leadership baton off to a guy named Joshua. And Joshua was a great leader, and he was a godly man. But when we turn to the book of Judges now, Joshua has died. And with him, the passing on of the faith to the next generation of Israelites has died with him for some reason. It's not happening now. And what happens, and Samuel, who's a prophet, writes it down for us because he's compiling all this. I want you to see what happens when the next generation is not told the story of God. Here it is right here. After that generation died, Joshua's generation, another generation grew up who did not acknowledge the Lord or remember the mighty things he had done for Israel. The Israelites did evil in the Lord's sight and served images of Baal. They abandoned the Lord, the God of their ancestors who had brought them out of Egypt. They went after other gods of the people around them. And friends, I believe that we are on the brink of living that out in 21st century America right now. This is where I believe we're at. I believe that Gen Z is going to be the generation that's going to grow up and they're not going to know the God. And so what are they going to do? They're going to chase after the gods of our culture. The gods that are the gods of sex, the gods of money, the gods of power, the gods of pleasure, the God of comfort. All these American gods are going to be the gods that they turn to when the God is no longer known. And I know what some of you are thinking right now. In fact, just go ahead and grab a beverage right now and take a sip. Some of you thinking right now, Pastor Phil, you are ruining a very good weekend. And what's even more amazing is you pay me to do this. Yeah. Now, I'm not trying to ruin anybody's weekend here. I'm not trying to depress you. You may think I'm trying to depress you, but I'm not trying to depress you. I'm actually trying to impress upon you. I'm trying to impress upon myself that we are in a place right now where we just can't sit back and do business as usual. We just can't assume any longer that Christianity is going to survive. Because we're one generation away from extinction, and the Gen Zers of the world right now are the first undisputed post-Christian generation. So just fast forward this, friends, and you tell me where it's going. And that's what I'm trying to say. We've got to wake up right now. And I want to actually try to encourage us all because I believe we can turn the tide. I believe that all is not lost. This is not an ain't it bad message, although it might sound like an ain't it bad message. There's actually reason for us to be encouraged because I believe that we have a very unique opportunity even right now to capture the next generation, to share God's story with them, to see them put their faith and their hope in Jesus. In fact, what I'm talking about right now, it's the next big thing at Crossroads. Our next big thing is not to launch another campus. Our next best big thing is to focus on the next generation and to try to get them to put their faith and their hope in Jesus. So we have a plan. We have a plan. In fact, we want to do two things. We want to do two things as a church. First of all, what we're going to do, we're going to redo how we do kids ministry. We're going to redo how we do kids ministry. Right now, kids ministry is happening at all of our campuses, and it's okay. But we're going to raise the bar substantially. We're going to take what we're doing right now, and we're going to completely redo the way we share God's story with kids. We're going to completely redo our ministry model. Completely. And the second thing we want to do, God willing, is this. We're going to redo our kids ministry spaces at all of our campuses. We're going to actually change the environment so that when kids walk in the door at Crossroads and they see kids ministry over here, they do this. Take me to Jesus. Take me to Jesus. Tell me more about this story. We want to create that kind of a wow environment. And so we hired a company from LA. Two guys that used to work at Disney, now Christian guys, started their own business, and they want to help churches create wow environments for kids. And that's what we're going to do. God willing. Does it cost a few bucks? Of course it does. Does it cost $1 million? Of course it does. Does it cost more like $1.5 million? Of course it does. But so what? I mean, that's what this whole thing, we're calling this whole thing, and there's a t-shirt even, I got it on, for the next. It's for the next. We want to do this for the next. We want to create this new way of doing kids ministry in all new spaces so that we can capture. In fact, the goal of this whole thing is right here. We want to capture the attention of the next generation so that Jesus can capture their hearts. And to do that, we got to do things differently. To do that today is not like we did it when I was a kid. I walked downstairs in a moldy building, moldy basement, and there was flannel grass. It was like, but that doesn't work anymore. You know that. I know that. And we got to wake up here, friends. What we want to do here, what we want to do at all of our campuses and our kids ministry, in one word, what do we want to do? We want to make them irresistible. We want to make them captivating, compelling. We want kids to get so jazzed, so stoked, to have so much fun learning about God that they naturally tell all their friends and bring their friends with them. They get so excited about what's happening and the way we're doing it and the environment that we've created for them, that they go to their school friends and they go to their neighborhood friends and they go to all their friends they play sports with. They go to all their friends and they invite them to come. And if we can pull that off, look up here. If we can pull that off, here's what we know. Their parents will come with them. Their none and done parents will come with them, because the parents of Gen Z do whatever their kids do. You've heard of helicopter parents? Parents that hover over their kids and overparent their kids. My daughter last weekend, if you were here, she talked about snowplow parents who push all adversity, all hardship, all difficulty away from their kids. Protect, 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 protect. Today's generation of parents, the best label I can give them is right here. They are sidecar parents. Wherever their kids go, they go. If their kid goes this way, the parent's going to go along for the ride. And so what we want to do is to create something that's so irresistible that those kids that aren't coming to church, they'll start coming to church with your kids and my grandkids. And then what we know is going to happen, mom and dad's going to show up. And then what we believe is going to happen, which is what this church is all about, is we believe if we give people enough time to learn about God, to tell the story about Jesus, that we believe that Jesus is going to capture their hearts. And when he does that, lives are changed. So that's what we're all about. That's what this new thing that's called For the Next is all about. And the question that's been bouncing around in my brain for about 6 months now, as we've been putting this whole thing together, the question that's been bouncing around in my brain, and I want to just invite you to bounce this around your brain, is this question right here. What is the faith of the next generation worth? What's it worth? What is making sure that your nephews and your nieces, what's the faith of them? What's it worth? What's the faith of your kids worth? What's the faith of your grandkids or your great-grandkids worth? What's the faith of that kid who lives next door to you? What's it worth? What's it worth? And then the last question is this: what are we willing to do to capture their attention so that Jesus can capture their hearts? So I have homework for you. Repeat after me. I love. Oh, we got to turn the volume up a little bit. Let's try it again. I love homework. You've never said those words out loud, ever. You've never said those words together. I have homework for you. I want you to take this brochure. And you say, wait, well, Pastor Phil, I don't have a brochure. Would the brochure distributors at each campus come forward right now? All right. I want you to take this brochure. You're going to have one in just a moment. And what I want you to do is I want you to spend some time just looking through this brochure. Because what you're going to find on the first page is just the goals and who we're working with, this company. And then on the next page, you're going to see like 3 or 4 pages of what our wow might look like. And it is like, oh boy. In fact, there was a kid, I'm not exaggerating, last service, looked at the picture, looked up at his mom and said, I'm coming every weekend. That's what we want to create. And then there's a few pages also, just because I want you to know, if you want to invest in this thing, I want you to know that you're investing in an organization that's above board, that's doing very, very well. I see some financial trends and just some information for you, because I want you to feel comfortable if you want to invest in this thing. And that's what this is all about. I'm going to ask you to take one of these, to take it home with you. And then if you would just spend some time devouring its contents. And then what I really, really, really want you to do is I want you to pray. I really do. I want you to pray for God's blessing on this initiative that we're calling For the Next. Would you pray about it? Would you even begin to pray about your involvement, what that might look like? And whatever you do, just keep that question in front of you. What is the faith of the next generation worth?